My wife said during an argument, "You left me for a better man." Maybe that was your mistake. The house went silent. I replied softly, "Then go fix your mistake." I walked out. Late that night, she texted, "We need to talk. Now." But when she saw what was waiting outside the house, she couldn't say a word. My name is Weston Pierce. I'm 39 years old. Until a few weeks ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. Not some over-the-top romance you see in movies, not the kind couples brag about online with perfect photos and long captions. Just solid. Reliable. The kind you build over 10 years of showing up, paying bills together, and choosing the same person every day. Vanessa and I had been married for 10 of those years together, a little longer. We met through mutual friends at a work event here in Omaha, hit it off over drinks, and things moved at a normal pace. Dates turned into weekends together, then moving in, then a wedding at a quiet venue outside the city. 4 years ago, we bought the house in a decent neighborhood, 2 reliable cars in the driveway, steady jobs that paid the mortgage and let us take a vacation once a year. I manage operations at a food processing plant, long hours sometimes, but predictable. Vanessa sells insurance, good money, flexible schedule, lots of networking. For a long time, it felt like enough. We talked about starting a family someday, but always pushed it further out when the timing was better, when work calmed down, when we felt more ready. Looking back, maybe that was the first sign we were drifting into routine instead of really growing together. Conversations shifted from dreams to schedules. Nights out became rare. We were comfortable, and I mistook comfort for strength. Then things started changing slowly at first. Vanessa began staying out later for client meetings or networking events. She'd come home energized in a way she hadn't been in years, phone always close by, smiling at messages she didn't share. She started mentioning an old name more often, someone from her past I'd only heard about in passing. Little comments here and there that didn't seem innocent anymore. I didn't think it would lead to the night everything broke open. One sentence from her changed it all, and my response ended 10 years in a heartbeat. If this story already has you wondering what happened next and whether I ever looked back, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You're going to want to hear how this actually ended, because the part after I walked out caught even me off guard. Looking back, the changes started creeping in about 4 months earlier, subtle enough that I could brush them off at first. Vanessa had always been good at her job as an insurance agent, meeting clients, attending networking events, building relationships that brought in steady commissions. But suddenly those evenings stretched longer. She'd text that a meeting ran late, or a potential client needed extra time, and she'd walk through the door after 9, sometimes 10, kicking off her shoes with an energy I hadn't seen in her for years. I noticed how she'd head straight to the kitchen, pour a glass of wine, and talk faster than usual about her day-new leads, industry updates, people she'd reconnected with. At first, it felt refreshing, like she was finally thriving after a slow period at work. My own job at the plant kept me tied to fixed shifts and production schedules, so I told myself her flexibility came with the territory. Stress from my side had been high too, with supply chain issues and overtime, and I didn't want to add pressure by questioning her. Then Quentin's name started coming up. Not all the time, just enough to stick. Quentin would have handled a claim like this so smoothly, she said one night over dinner, referring to some complicated policy story. Or Quentin always knew the best spots downtown for client lunches. I knew the basics about him. He'd been her boyfriend back in college, serious for a couple years, until he took a job out west, and they called it quits long distance. She'd mentioned him maybe twice in the entire time we'd been together, always casually, like ancient history. But now little references slipped in, how he used to fix things around their old apartment, or how he had the same taste in coffee. I asked once lightly why his name was popping up more. She laughed it off, said she'd run into him on LinkedIn, that he'd moved back to the Midwest after his company expanded operations here. Just catching up, nothing more, old friends checking in. It made sense in a city like Omaha where paths cross eventually. I let it go. Questioning it felt insecure, and we'd built our marriage on trust, not suspicion. Still, other things shifted. She started dressing sharper for those evening appointments. New blouses, heels she hadn't worn in ages, makeup a touch bolder. Her phone stayed face down on the counter more often, or she'd angle it away when notifications lit up. Date nights we used to plan faded out completely. When I suggested we grab dinner somewhere new, she'd say she was exhausted from the week or had early calls the next day. Intimacy slowed too. Nights where we'd just scroll on our phones in bedbacks turned the space between us growing without either of us addressing it. I adjusted like I thought a good husband should. Took on more around the house grocery runs after my shift handling bills so she could focus on closing deals. Cooked meals she used to love left them warming when she came in late. Told myself the distance was temporary. Her job was picking up, mine was demanding, and we'd get back on track once things settled. I didn't want to be the guy who accused his wife over nothing, especially when she seemed happier in her work than she had in a long time. But doubt crept in anyway. I'd catch her smiling at her screen in the living room, thumbs flying across it, then locking it quickly when I walked in. She added a password she hadn't used before, said it was for client data security. Weekends changed too. She'd head out for brunch meetings or policy reviews that lasted hours, coming home with shopping bags from stores we usually went to together. One Saturday morning, while she was in the shower, getting ready for another of those outings, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She'd left it there for once. I wasn't trying to snoop, just glanced over to silence it so it wouldn't disturb her. The preview popped up clear. Last night was fun. Same time next week, from a contact saved only as Q. My stomach tightened. I didn't unlock it. Didn't scroll. Just stared at the screen until it went dark, then set it back exactly where it had been. One evening, while Vanessa was upstairs getting ready for yet another client dinner, I sat in the living room with her phone in my hand. I hadn't planned to bring it up that night, but the message from earlier in the day kept replaying in my mind. When she came down dressed up more than usual for a weeknight, I set my coffee aside and kept my voice even. "Hey, your phone buzzed earlier." I saw a preview pop up from someone saved as Q. It said last night was great and asked about next week. She froze halfway through grabbing her keys, then turned with a tight smile. "Oh, it's just a work contact. We had a group thing after a seminar. Nothing big." "It didn't look like a group thing," I said, watching her face. "Saved as Q. That's Quentin, right?" Her expression shifted, eyes narrowing a bit. "Weston, seriously. You're checking my phone now." I didn't check anything. It lit up right in front of me. "I'm asking because it doesn't add up with everything else lately." She crossed her arms. "Everything else? What's that supposed to mean? I've been killing it at work, bringing in more commissions than ever, and you're acting like that's a problem. It's not the work. It's the late nights, the way you light up talking about him, the password you suddenly need. If it's nothing, why hide it?" "I'm not hiding anything." She snapped, voice rising. "Quentin's an old friend who's back in the area. We've grabbed coffee a couple times to catch up. That's it. You're making this into something it's not, because you're stressed from the plant and taking it out on me." I stood up, trying to keep calm. "Coffee a couple times. The message said last night was great. That doesn't sound like coffee." She laughed, short and sharp. "You're paranoid. It was a networking event. People say that stuff. God, I can't believe we're arguing about this." The conversation spiraled from there. I pushed for honesty. She deflected, accusing me of not supporting her success. Words got heated fast, years of built-up frustration pouring out. I told her the distance had been eating at me for months. She fired back that I'd been checked out too, buried in my routines, never making time for anything new. Then, in the middle of it all, she blurted it out. "You know what? You left me for a better man. Maybe that was your mistake." The room went quiet. I stared at her, the words hanging heavy between us. She'd meant Quentin, the one she'd dated before me, the one she'd chosen to walk away from back then. But now in her anger, she was throwing it in my face like I'd stolen something subpar. I felt something snap inside, not loud, just final. "Then go fix your mistake," I said softly. She opened her mouth, eyes wide, like she hadn't expected me to call her bluff. No words came out. I grabbed my keys and wallet from the counter, walked to the door, and left without another word. The drive to my sister Skylar's place took 20 minutes. She lived across town in a small apartment, and when I showed up unannounced after 10, she took one look at me and stepped aside. "You okay?" she asked, closing the door behind me. "I need a place to crash tonight." She nodded, no questions yet, and showed me to the guest room. I turned my phone off completely, tossed it on the nightstand, and lay there staring at the ceiling until exhaustion took over. The next morning, when I finally powered it back on, notifications flooded in. Dozens of missed calls and texts from Vanessa, starting late the night before and continuing through the early hours. Over the next couple of days, my phone continued buzzing with messages from Vanessa. Skylar handed it to me each time it went off on the counter, raising an eyebrow but staying out of it. I finally scrolled through them on the second morning, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold. The text started apologetic. "I'm sorry for what I said. It came out wrong." Then shifted to worry. "Where are you? Please answer." By evening, they turned pleading. "We need to talk. I didn't mean to hurt you." A few mentioned coming home, how quiet the house felt, how she couldn't sleep. One late at night read, "This is blowing everything out of proportion. Come back so we can fix it." I didn't reply to any. Part of me wanted to believe it could be fixed, but another part, the one that heard her words, clearly knew better. Skylar listened when I told her the basics. No judgment, just said I could stay as long as I needed. Work kept me busy during the day. I buried myself in shifts at the plant, grateful for the routine that didn't require talking. By the third day, Vanessa called repeatedly until I picked up. Her voice sounded tired, smaller than usual. "Can we meet? Just talk somewhere neutral? Please." I agreed to a small coffee shop near downtown Omaha, one we'd gone to years ago, but not recently. Public enough to stay civil, familiar enough not to feel cold. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She stood when she saw me, eyes red like she hadn't slept much. "Thanks for coming," she said, sitting back down. I took the chair across from her and nodded. "What do you want to say?" She wrapped her hands around her cup. "I messed up. That fight got out of control and I said things I regret. I was angry and defensive." "About Quentin," I said, keeping my tone flat. She looked down. "Yes. About him." "Tell me the truth, Vanessa. All of it." She hesitated, then sighed. "We reconnected online a few months ago. He reached out after moving back for work. At first it was just messages, catching up on old times. Then coffee when he was in town. It stayed friendly for a while, but it didn't stay friendly." "No," she admitted quietly. "It turned into more lunches, longer talks. Nothing physical, but emotional, I guess." I got caught up in how easy it felt, remembering who I was back then. I leaned forward slightly. "And the comparisons. Saying I took you from someone better, that was cruel. I didn't mean it like that. I was lashing out because you called me on it. You've been measuring me against him for months," I said. "The late nights, the excitement when his name came up. I felt it even if I didn't say anything." She nodded, eyes filling. "I know. I got nostalgic and it spiraled, but it's not about wanting him over you. I've been confused, missing feeling. Wanted, I suppose. Our life got so predictable." "Predictable because we built it together," I replied. "Bills paid, house running, jobs, handling everything. That's what marriage is a lot of the time. I realize that now." She reached across the table but stopped short when I didn't move. "Can we try counseling, work through this?" I sat back, the weight of her words settling. She wasn't denying the connection anymore, just downplaying it. emotional involvement with someone else while keeping me in the background that wasn't confusion. That was choosing to explore options. I needed honesty, I said finally. You gave me defensiveness until there was no way out. Please, Weston, don't throw away 10 years. I'm not the one who started throwing. The conversation circled a bit longer, her promising to cut contact me, pointing out the trust broken. She cried quietly at one point, apologizing again. I felt the pull to comfort her, the habit of years kicking in but held back. When I stood to leave, she looked panicked. What happens now? I need time, I said, though I already knew. Walking out of the cafe, the crisp air hit me hard. Her admission confirmed everything I'd suspected, and worse, it showed she'd been willing to keep the marriage on hold while figuring out if the past felt better. That realization cut deeper than the fight. I couldn't go back to being the safe choice. By the time I reached Skylar's, clarity had set in. I wasn't waiting for her to decide anymore. It was time to take control and act. A week after that cafe conversation, I stopped ignoring the truth. Staying at Skylar's gave me space to think clearly without interruptions or old routines pulling me back. I spent one afternoon researching separation laws in Nebraska. No kids, similar incomes, joint property, but straightforward finances. It could be clean if handled right. I called a lawyer I'd heard about through a coworker, someone who'd dealt with similar cases. Explained the situation calmly. Emotional involvement with an ex, no infidelity proven, but trust destroyed, intent to separate. He asked practical questions. Did I feel safe returning to the house? Were there any shared debts beyond the mortgage? I answered honestly. By the end of the call, he outlined options: file for legal separation, first secure the property, move essentials out. That same day, I booked a small moving truck for the weekend and scheduled a locksmith. Skylar offered to come with me, not for confrontation, but as support. I accepted. I wasn't looking for a fight, just to reclaim what was mine and set boundaries. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, typical Omaha winter. The truck pulled up outside the house, first followed by the locksmith's van. I'd timed it for when Vanessa would likely be home. Avoidance wasn't the goal. When I turned into the driveway, her car sat in its usual spot. She opened the front door as I stepped out, confusion crossing her face at the sight of the vehicles and Skylar beside me. Weston. What's all this? I'm moving out, I said, keeping my voice steady. My voice? Today. She stepped onto the porch, arms folded tight against the chill. You're serious? After 1 week? This isn't about 1 week. It's about months of knowing where things stood. The movers waited by the truck. I'd instructed them to hold off until I signaled. The locksmith stood ready with his tools. Vanessa's eyes darted between us, all realization dawning. You can't just change the locks. This is my house too. We both own it, I replied. But during separation, securing property is allowed. You'll get access again once terms are set through lawyers. Her face paled. This is extreme. We can still talk. We talked. You admitted what was going on. I'm not waiting around while you figure things out. She started toward me, voice cracking. Please don't do this here like this. I walked past her into the house, Skylar following quietly. Upstairs, I packed clothes, work laptop files, books, only what I'd brought in or bought myself. No shared items, no photos, nothing sentimental that would drag it out. The movers carried boxes down efficiently, bedroom dresser I'd purchased, desk from my office corner, personal gear from the garage. She hovered the whole time, alternating between pleas and frustration. You're really leaving me with nothing resolved. At one point, she grabbed my arm. I said I'd end it with him. I pulled away gently. It's not just about ending it. It's about why it started. The locksmith worked while the truck loaded, front door first, then back. Vanessa watched from the driveway as the last box went in, arms wrapped around herself, saying less as time passed. When the new keys were handed to me, she just stared, speechless, like the reality finally hit. I signed the paperwork for a short-term apartment lease I'd arranged earlier that week, handed the movers their tip, and climbed into my car. Skylar squeezed my shoulder before heading to her own vehicle. As we pulled away, Vanessa stayed on the porch, unmoving. That evening and over the next few days, her approach shifted. Direct messages slowed. Instead, mutual friends started reaching out casual check-ins that turned into questions about what happened. Then her dad Marvin called. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa's frustration grew. Friends we'd known for years started texting or calling out of the blue. At first, it was subtle. "Heard you two are having a rough patch. Everything okay?" Then more direct, repeating versions of what she'd told them, that I'd walked out without warning, abandoned the marriage over nothing left her to handle the house alone. Some sounded concerned for her, others awkward, like they weren't sure whose side to take. I kept responses short and factual. Told them we'd grown apart, that reconnecting with an old flame had complicated things, and I'd chosen to separate. No details, no blame beyond that. A couple stopped reaching out after others stayed neutral. Omaha isn't huge. Word travels fast in overlapping circles from work and neighborhoods. Then Marvin called one evening. I was at my new apartment unpacking the last boxes when his name popped up. Rarely called me directly before. I answered anyway. "Weston, this is Marvin Harrington, Vanessa's father. I know who it is." He didn't waste time on greetings. "What the hell are you doing to my daughter? She's devastated, says you locked her out of her own home and walked away like 10 years meant nothing." "That's not how it happened," I said evenly. "We own the house together. I secured it during separation, which is legal here." "Legal? You think that makes it right?" "She's my little girl, crying every night because her husband up and left over some imagined slight. It wasn't imagined. She admitted to an emotional relationship with her ex. He brushed that off. Young couples go through phases. You don't throw away a marriage because of a few conversations. Vanessa says you've been distant for years, buried in that job of yours, never making her feel special." I stayed calm, leaning against the kitchen counter. "If that's what she says, it is. And I'm telling you now, I won't let my daughter suffer because you decided to play tough. Fix this. Come home, talk it out like adults, or you'll regret making an enemy of her family." The threat hung there, not violent but clear. He had connections from years and business friends who knew people. In a place like this, pressure could come in subtle ways, whispers at the plant, complications down the line. "I'm sorry she's hurting," I said. "But the marriage ended when trust did. I'm not coming back. You're making a mistake, son. Think about what you're giving up." "I have thought about it. Every day." He huffed, voice rising. "Fine. Play it your way. But don't expect us to sit quiet while you destroy her life." The call ended abruptly. I set the phone down, adrenaline steady, no shake in my hands. His words didn't sway me, they confirmed I'd done the right thing by setting boundaries early. Skylar checked in later that night, having heard from a mutual friend about the rumors. I filled her in on the call. She shook her head. Classic Marvin. Always thought he could fix everything with a phone call. I forwarded the details to my lawyer the next morning just in case. He advised documenting any further contact, assured me threats like that rarely amounted to much legally. A few days later, the lawyer filed the divorce papers, officially irreconcilable differences, equitable split of assets, no alimony given our incomes. Vanessa had 30 days to respond. Around the same time, she started facing reality on Quentin's side. Once the papers were served, things escalated quickly. Vanessa contested, at first pushing for mediation and counseling sessions. We went through a couple neutral ground with a mediator, but it became clear positions hadn't changed. She wanted reconciliation. I wanted closure. The process moved faster than many Nebraska's no-fault system. No kids, comparable earnings, straightforward assets. Mediation settled the details. She bought out my share of the property with a combination of her savings and a loan, keeping it, since she'd been living there. We split the joint accounts down the middle. Retirement, untouched cars stayed with who drove them. No ongoing support needed. By the end, she walked away with the home but less liquidity than expected, commissions fluctuating in a slower market. Word spread wider in Omaha circles. At work functions or chance run-ins at grocery stores, people offered awkward condolences or curious glances. Some friends distanced themselves uncomfortable with the split narrative. Others whispered about how Vanessa seemed off lately, commissions down, spending more time alone. The community wasn't cruel, just small enough that changes didn't stay private long. From mutual contacts, I heard Quentin had backed away when a relationship came up. He'd enjoyed the reconnection, nostalgia, attention, no strings, but wasn't ready for more. Recently, out of his own messy situation, he told her he valued the friendship, yet wasn't looking for a deeper involvement. She'd pushed for definitions, weekends together, future talk. He pulled back, conversations tapering to occasional texts, then nothing substantial. One friend mentioned she'd seemed stunned, like the fantasy hadn't matched reality. Financial strain hit her harder than anticipated. Keeping the property meant higher monthly payments, alone, utilities, and maintenance adding up. Insurance sales slowed with economic shifts, fewer clients closing big policies. She dipped into what remained of her share of savings faster than planned, cutting back on outings, mentioning it casually to those still in touch. I focused forward. The apartment felt simpler, fewer rooms to maintain, space that was fully mine. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony overlooking the city, evenings free for gym sessions or catching up with colleagues without tension. Skylar and a few close friends became my regular circle, barbecues on weekends, no drama attached. Work at the plant stayed steady, even rewarding, promoted to oversee a new production line, better hours, small raise. I picked up hobbies I'd set aside, weekend hikes in the state parks nearby, reading without interruptions. Therapy once a week helped process the shift, not dwelling on anger, but understanding patterns I'd ignored. Dating wasn't a priority yet, though the idea didn't feel impossible anymore. Months in life settled into a rhythm that felt earned. No lingering arguments, no second-guessing decisions. The freedom came quietly, chores done on my schedule, groceries for one, silence when I wanted it. Then one night, after mediation wrapped and the decree was nearly final, a message came from Vanessa. "Can we talk one more time? I know I've asked before, but I'm ready to give us another real chance." 8 months later, in my new place across town, the divorce became final. The papers arrived in the mail one afternoon, signed and stamped, ending 10 years on a quiet note. No courtroom, no last-minute drama, just closure through lawyers and mediators. Vanessa got the house after buying out my equity along with her car and half the savings. I kept mine, my retirement, intact, and walked away with enough to start fresh without looking back. I deleted the last message from her without replying, the one asking for another chance. Blocked the number, removed old contacts tied to our shared life, and let mutual friends know I wished her well, but needed distance. Some understood, others faded naturally. Marvin never reached out again, and rumors died down as people moved on to new topics. Looking back, the biggest lesson hit hard: no one should be anyone's backup plan. Vanessa had kept me as the stable option while testing if the past felt better. When it didn't, she wanted to rewind, but trust doesn't work that way. Self-respect meant more than holding on to something broken. I refused to compete with a memory or wait while someone decided my worth. The consequences for her played out realistically. Quentin vanished when a relationship came up, leaving her to face the split alone. Keeping the property stretched her budget, thin mortgage, solo repairs adding up, commissions inconsistent in a tough market. Friends mentioned she'd scaled back, sold some furniture, taken on extra appointments to cover bills. The Omaha crowd noticed. Whispers turned to sympathy, then quiet as life went on. It wasn't vindictive on my part, just the natural fallout of choices made. Therapy helped unpack it all. I saw where I'd overlooked red flags, adjusted to distance instead of addressing it. Not blaming myself anymore, just learning. I'd spent years building security, thinking reliability equaled love. Now I knew better. Real connection requires presence from both sides. My days felt lighter. The apartment overlooked a park. Mornings quiet with just my coffee routine. Work brought new challenges. A regional role opened up travel occasional but rewarding. Weekends meant drives out of town meeting new people through hobby groups. No explanations needed about the past. Friendships deepened with those who stuck around. Skylar and I grabbed dinner often, laughing about old times without dwelling. Dating entered the picture slowly, casual coffee here and there, nothing rushed. The idea of sharing life again didn't scare me. It felt possible on my terms. At 39 alone didn't mean lonely. It meant freedom choices, mind space, my own future open. I'd rather build something real than settle for being second choice. The peace that came with that decision proved stronger than any regret. For the first time in years, everything felt steady, not because someone else was there, but because I finally was.